Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is going to be the first episode of a new series that I'm calling Street Journals, where I take you around and show you all the cool street locations and the street photography that I do, and then at the end of the 8 episodes I'm going to do an analysis on my photos, maybe show you a bit of the behind the scenes and the editing suite, and yeah, we're just going to have a good time, go around taking some street photos, and I thought what a better place to start off taking these new videos than Nice. So we're going to go down to the beach. I took this photo last night and I really want to try and adapt and improve on that image. So we're going to go and do that now at the volleyball place down on the Nice beach. So basically, we came to this place last night and now we can't seem to find where the volleyball thing is. So okay, so we've just seen a volleyball going above the crowd on the beach. So hopefully this is the same place. Okay, so basically what I'm doing now is I'm just exploring all these different angles. And the image that I got last night I wasn't happy with compositionally or framing and it just didn't really work. So I'm just trying to get a bit lower down and see what I can do. That's where I go. Just been experimenting with perspective and symmetry. So now I'm going to move around to the side, try and get more of the netted to show that they are playing volleyball, as opposed to just 2 poles either side. So we'll see what happens. I think I need to be lower, get more sky in, and then you'll see the ball more clear. Sort of see that I'm going for this framing where I've got this foreground with a net in the foreground, which I quite like. It's framing these guys quite nicely. And I've just got a bit more sky in, because when you get the sky you get the contrast and then you can see the ball more clearly. Okay, they're done. So am I. Okay, so we just finished up the shoot with the volleyball guys. I'm going to look through the photos, do a bit of editing, and then yeah, I think I got at least one good shot, I'm not sure. The guys started sort of giving us funny looks, and I think they got a bit crotchety towards the end, so I'm going to go back, have a look, and then I'll let you know what my favourites were and what my least favourites were, because that's equally as important. So yeah, good evening of shooting. I think we were out for about 20 minutes, which is, for one location, is pretty good, so let's go back. Okay everybody, so welcome back. This is my sort of studio office space, which is where I'm going to be recording the second parts of all of these videos. I think it's a good idea to just break it up. It gives me more time to reflect on the images that I've made, and also gives me time to sort of work them a bit and see how I like them and do some different versions of them. So without any further ado, I'm just going to go through. I've got my phone here, I've got positives, negatives, my favourite photo, my least favourite photo, and the gear that was used. So that's what we're going to cover in this little section. So the positives of the shoot, what went well. I was really happy with how the light went that evening. It was quite soft, which meant that the shadows weren't too intense because it was later in the day, which meant that the sand was fairly clean. If I wanted to get that really harsh, contrasty, shadowy look, then obviously I would have gone earlier in the day. But also that meant that there was less people about sort of later in the day. I know that sounds sort of counterintuitive, but like the beach is so busy during the day, and later in the evening it sort of mellows out. There's not too many people about, which meant it was a lot easier to actually take photos. Also, the people who were playing volleyball were initially a bit sort of skeptical about what I was doing. A couple of the guys gave me sort of funny looks, slightly chatting to each other, sort of pointed at me, and I was just like, okay, I'm here, I'm taking photos, I'm allowed to do that. But gradually they sort of got used to the fact that I was there. If you spend long enough in one location, you tend to just sort of blend in. And I was using my Fuji, so I wasn't using a big, DSLR. They probably just thought I was some sort of tourist taking snapshots of people playing volleyball. So yeah, it does have its advantages being a tourist, because people just seem to think that you're just taking touristy photos and not taking photos of them playing sport, essentially. The negatives of the shoot. I sort of went there with an image in mind, based off inspiration and what I wanted to adapt on from the time I'd previously gone to that location. So I sort of achieved my goal. I probably would have gone back there again if I had the time, and sort of worked it from quite a few different angles. I did notice that further along the beach in the other direction there was another volleyball sort of net area, which I might have paid a visit, but obviously time restrictions, I could only do so much. So I came away with 3 photos that I'm pleased with, and my favourite photo is the one of the, well, I'll just show it, is this one. I really like how compositionally it works. I framed him in the net. I managed to get down low, which I mentioned that in the previous section of this video, where I'm out there taking photos, and I say that I really want to get down low so I get more of the sky in the top half of the image, and that allows me to make contrast between the volleyball and the sky, which then obviously you can see the volleyball more clearly. I like how on the right side of the image there's 2 people looking at the guy hitting the ball, and I think that creates a sort of a storyline which works quite well. Also the street lights are in the back, so you can sort of tell that it's later in the evening. There's sort of a sort of chill mood to the image, even though there's a lot of action going on. Another thing I really like about the way I composed it is that I've got like a line of people running across the image where they're just sitting on the esplanade and they're just like watching the guys playing volleyball, and I think it works really well. It's sort of almost comical because they're all sitting over the edge with their legs just dangling, and I think it works really well. The second image that I'm pleased with is just the standard sort of straight on one, this image here, of them just playing volleyball. I think this works in a more documentary style, just to set the scene of what's going on, and then obviously the next image is the guy actually playing. And the third image that I'm pleased with isn't actually of the volleyball players, it's of this like little beachy area that's sort of sealed off because there's an outflow from one of the rivers or something, and there's like this rocky outcrop where people sit, and I managed to get the reflection of them, and there's people walking across the frame and they're reflected in the water, and it works really well in black and white. I did originally have it in colour because the sunset is quite a nice gradient, but then I put it into black and white, and I really liked how the reflections suddenly made much more, they're a bigger part of the image, as opposed to the sunset being the sort of the main attraction. My least favourite image from the shoot is of these metal beams that were, I think there's some sort of art installation across the waterfront, but they had like these spotlights underneath them, which I thought in my mind would work really well to illuminate somebody from underneath and give them these weird shadows, because you never really are lit from underneath because the sun's always above you. So I thought it might be quite interesting to have some artificial light lighting somebody from underneath. It was a proof of concept and it just didn't really work. I'll put that here. I didn't think it was really going to work in the first place. I just thought I'd give it a test, see if I could work that location, but obviously it just didn't work out. So in terms of gear, I was using my Fuji X100F, which is perfect for street photos. It's just so small. I've got an entire video on my minimal street photography kit, so I'll link that somewhere. Might be in the description, might be an annotation. But yeah, definitely go check that out where I talk about this. I am working on a review of this camera for street stuff. I really want to make it completely different, so I want to actually show some behind the scenes of me doing some street photography with it and evaluating it as I go along. Settings wise, I'm not going to go over settings because obviously it changes on each of the scenarios. What I tend to do is I tend to expose for the highlights, and that then crushes my blacks essentially, which is where I get that nice sort of contrasty black and white from. Also, I just like to retain detail in the highlights. I think it's important because when they're blown out, it's sort of fairly obvious, whereas if the shadows are crushed, it's less obtrusive and you just seem to get along with it better. But that's all my personal taste. Obviously, people like to expose for different things. I prefer to conserve the highlights and create that contrasty look. One thing I will say is that I was shooting at a fairly high ISO because it was quite late in the evening. There wasn't much light going on, but the Fuji handled it absolutely perfectly. The grain structure of Fuji cameras is second to none, and yeah, I'm very pleased with how this performed on that shoot. So apart from that, that's essentially my evaluation of the shoot, and that's sort of how I want these videos to progress. I want to have a behind the scenes, like an on location video where I talk about what I'm doing as I'm doing it and show you examples of my work whilst that's going on, and then have a second part to the episode where I evaluate my images, evaluate the shoot, and just have a chat about what's going on, what I think could have been improved, what I think went really well. And I think it's important to always be evaluating, so that's how I think I'm going to structure these episodes. But if you've got any feedback, if there's anything you want to see, if there's anything you want to know, be sure to leave a comment, send me a message, DM me on Instagram, tweet me. Thank you for watching this first episode of Street Journals. I hope you enjoyed it. I think this could do really well this series, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.